Hi everyone, this is Jerry. This is a game from the Tal Memorial 2010. It's a very strong tournament. Of the top 20 ranked players in the world, exactly 10 are competing in this. They all have FIDE ratings greater than 2700, and one player in particular, Levon Aronian, entering this tournament had a 2800 plus rating. So very strong tournament, no doubt. In this particular game, round 4, Hikaru Nakamura had the white pieces against Vladimir Kramnik and opened with e4. e5, knight f3, knight f6. This is likely coming as no surprise whatsoever to Hikaru. The Petroff has been played by Kramnik very, very often, and he has had great successes with it. And by successes, I'm referring to the ability to really just draw whenever you play this particular opening. And that seems to be the mentality, by the way, with this tournament. Many players are looking to maybe just draw with the black pieces and look to convert the full point when you have the white pieces. So let's see how things progress. Knight takes, d6, knight back, and knight takes pawn. So all very common stuff. What we see next is knight c3. One other variation to be aware of, which is also common from this position, is d4, d5, bishop out. Really just both sides getting their pieces out, the minor pieces, getting castled. c4 strikes at the center. Knight here looks to obtain the bishop pair. White dodges that, bishop out. Kick the knight back prior to developing the knight here. The exchange of knights followed by castle. So really what's going on in this position, not too much. I mean, there's some tension between these pawns, but that'll be quickly resolved. Also, where is there an imbalance? That's really what you have to, or one of the things you could be asking yourself in any given position. Where is there an imbalance? In this situation here, we have an imbalance in the form of pawn structure. We don't have the same sort of pawn structure on both ends here. When we consider just the king side and the king side alone, these three pawns, counteract the other three. So it's really just the queen side pawns that are a little bit differently placed. So that's really the only imbalance that I'm seeing from such a position. So if you consider, maybe one side has a lead in development, not really. Both sides are probably equal with regard to that. And there's really no one side that has a serious weakness. I mean, where is there weakness on the black or white side? You're kind of hard pressed to find a weakness on either end. We don't get into that situation, but instead just an immediate knight c3. Takes, and now bishop out. So really just getting our minor pieces out, getting castled. White has doubled pawns, but in return has just rapid development going on. This bishop could come out right away. Bishop e3, castle, queen d2 looks to castle queenside, knight d7, and queenside castle. So from d7, the knight has a lot of possibilities, but we don't see where that knight declares itself just yet. Instead, we have this rook to e8 move, very logical. This is the only open file, so let's throw our rook on it. h4, what is this doing? Well, we have the situation here where we have opposite sides castling. So what do we try to do? We try to open up some files for our rook so that we could attack one another's king. h4 is essentially allowing a move like knight to g5, so that this g5 square could kind of be a springboard for this knight, where from the g5 would be hitting at h7, and as white you could kind of anticipate a move like bishop d3, striking at h7 yet again. So c6, a couple quick points to make. The queen can now come out along this diagonal, and it's supporting d5. Expansion in the center, d5. So bishop d3, there's not really a better diagonal for this bishop to be on. If you just go to c4, you're going to get the door slammed in your face with d5. So that's why we just see immediately bishop d3. Yeah, you're obstructing these two, this rook and queen, but really there's not going to be too much going on along this file. So knight f6, repositioning, and there's actually quite a few moves where it's really just repositioning type. Your pieces are all developed, and sometimes you just have to ask yourself, how can I improve upon my piece's position? So knight to f6, this is a good move. It allows the bishop to come out, and it's a defender of the black king side. So rook to e1, white is reasoning that it's better placed on the E file opposed to the D file. The E file is open. The E file is open. The D file is considered half open, so maybe the rook is better placed on just a completely open file. D5 is the last move, expanding in the center, and bishop to D4. This move is made with the intention of really just giving this bishop up. And the reason I'm able to say that is because as white, if you're going to be making a move such as bishop to D4, you really have to ask yourself the following question: what if my opponent plays C5? You can't really, as black, allow your opponent's white pieces to just sit on these nice squares right here. And from D4, this bishop is very well placed. It's striking right at the black king side. You don't want to even be in that situation for too long. So you kind of have to ask yourself, what if C5? What do you do next? Do you go back here? If you do, what was really accomplished by that? Not a whole lot. And if you go here as an alternative, it's not quite clear what it's even doing from that square. How is it really that much better from this square opposed to this square? So really what it's coming down to is this bishop D4 move is played with the intention of giving itself up for the knight, and that's exactly what occurs. C5, bishop takes, bishop takes. What to do next? Another repositioning move. Queen F4. It's better placed on F4 opposed to D2. We have all the pieces out and developed, so how could we improve upon our piece placement? Bishop E6, more development. Knight G5. White is trying to induce some sort of weakness against the black kingside position. So Knight G5, H7 is now hit twice. How to meet that threat? If you take the knight, that's not a good idea because you simply bring more white pieces into the attack. You don't want to open up files. So we have an instance where we're castled on opposite wings. Don't open files so that your opponent is allowed to have their rooks come directly into play against your king. So G6 is the preferred move, of course, defending against H7, and now we have bishop to B5 hitting this rook. There's only one convenient way to meet this threat, and that's to play rook F8. If you play to E7, you're hanging this bishop. So rook F8, knight takes, pawn takes, and rook takes pawn. So white is currently up a pawn, but not so fast. We have bishop takes pawn, discovered attack against the white queen. Queen moves away, and now bishop goes back to G7. One other thing to note is that when, from this position the queen is hit, how can you really place the queen on a good square where you cause a lot of maybe problems for your opponent's king? Just, you kind of want to just stay off of dark squares, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Your opponent has a dark square bishop, so let's maybe keep the queen on a light square. And also we're just pinning this pawn to the king. So bishop now reacts to the pawn's threat, and now we have H5 looking to just get this rook involved on H1 so that after pawn takes the rook can see a bit more clearly. And now C4. This move was played with a great deal of thought. In fact, I believe it was about a half hour that Kramnik spent on this particular move, trying to just shut this bishop out, keeping it just a sort of like a one-dimensional piece, or just sectioned off to just the queen side and the queen side alone. And there's also possibilities of maybe even trapping the bishop with A6, bishop back, and then B5. So white has to be a bit careful, and white invested quite a bit of time on this next move as well. I believe it was maybe roughly 40 minutes on this next move, pawn takes pawn. Not sure what other things were being considered at this point, but that's the move that was played, pawn takes pawn, followed by an H6 move. This might seem awkward to some of you, but this H6 move has the idea of just keeping things closed. You really don't want to allow any of these heavy pieces access to this H7 square. So we don't want to, we want to keep things closed as best we can as black. And also what's going on as a result of this move is that black is essentially using this white pawn as a defender for their king. So this pawn right here kind of just gets in the way of the white pieces. White, in fact, would be much better off without even having this pawn on the board. So this pawn just gets in the way of the rook, the queen, and eventually this bishop would much rather not have this pawn on the board. It just gets in the way of the bishop as well. So rook to D1. What do we try to do in such a position? This bishop is fantastic on g7. It's a multi-purpose piece. It's an aggressor, it's an attacker, even though it's on g7, and it's also a great defender. You really just, the worst piece for white right now is this bishop here. It's in danger of maybe even getting trapped, or just, it's not contributing to the position. So how can white make moves in order to get this bishop here functioning a bit better? Rook to d1 takes steps in that direction, just trying to take this pawn here, and once this pawn falls, then this pawn could fall. Also, the immediate threat after this rook to d1 move is just bishop takes c4, since there's a pin against the queen. Kramnik follows up with queen a5, hits the bishop, and gives up this pawn. But what do you get in return? This a2 pawn. You might be thinking, why give up a center pawn for a rook pawn? Well, we have an instance here where there's more things to really be considering, namely our king position. We really just want to rattle one another's king from such a position. We really want to chase the king around, have this bishop really show itself, and while white is gobbling up these two pawns here on d5 and c4, black is able to make the white king position a bit shaky. So after bishop takes pawn, queen takes pawn with check, king to d1. So who's the side that has the better king position? That's a tough call. Both sides really have to be careful from this position. Yeah, these rooks are centralized. This rook has yet to move, but does it really even need to move? This rook had a journey. Well, it castled, went to e8, then it went back to this f8 square. It's functioning quite well. There's possibilities for taking on f2 in some variations. However, not right now. If rook takes pawn in this position, bad things are going to happen. Namely, this rook check move. And after a move like rook takes rook, discover check, and now this queen is going to be lost. So that's why we're not seeing something like that occur. But instead, safety move, let's just get out of any possible discovered attack against our king. Let's get it to a dark square. King h8, and now white meets that threat with this pawn to f3 move. So is it really just by chance that all the white pieces right now are finding themselves on light squares? That actually happens quite a bit when your opponent when you have opposite color bishops on the board. Usually just try to stay off the dark squares. In this instance here, you're going to try to stay off the dark squares. So pawn to f3, and now past pawns must be pushed. What is there really? What are the alternatives for black in this position? It seems like this is the best try right here, or maybe even throwing a check in is another possibility. We see a5 here, but one other quick variation to consider is, what if queen b1? How to meet this check? Where do we move our king? It might be very tempting to want to just go to d2, but there's always a risk with that whenever you place your king on the same color square as this bishop right here. In fact, the best move from this position is to actually give up this pawn here. Queen takes, and then you'll have this sort of situation going on. The queen is conveniently guarding this bishop on c4. It's a roughly equal position. Still, both sides have to be very careful. Black is definitely the side who has to watch that they don't allow one of the white major pieces to get to this h7 square. That's really going to be the end of the road for black if that's allowed to be played. But we don't see this particular variation, this queen to b1 move. Just one other quick thing to note is what would occur if after king here, we could see rook to c8, hitting this bishop once, and now there's already the threat of queen here, check, and then this bishop could be picked off. So already white would have to be maybe making moves like this, or if you think that you could maybe move this bishop just out of harm's way, you're going to be running into mate very soon with bishop here check. If king here, this is mate, but it's really just mate no matter how you look at it. If king here, we would have check. If king here, check again, followed by mate. So that's not going to happen, but it's worth considering that particular variation. F3, we don't see queen b1, but instead a5. Rook to the 7th rank. Let's get this rook functioning on a better square. The 7th rank is a hard rank to argue with. It's very well placed from there. And now a4. This pawn is just a few moves away from queening, and it would be queening with check if allowed to get to a1. So white has to act fast. How do you really crash through against this bishop right here? Queen to h4 comes with a very deadly threat if black is careless, and black isn't going to be careless at this high level of play. If this move is played here, that's going to lead to a mate in the following way: a queen sacrifice followed by rook check, king here, and a nice mate, rook to e8. Pins this rook and does not allow this rook to interpose the check against the black king. This position is mate. We're not going to be seeing that. Instead, how the game ended up finishing is that after queen to h4, we have queen check, king up. This game ends up with the threefold repetition, or in other words, just a draw. So that's all for this video. I hope you got something out of it. Take care. Bye.